Okay. Now we are here. We finally got you Skyping. Alton Meeks, how are you doing?
Good, man. Tough. Not very tech savvy, but I figured it out. Got
You figured it out. You figured it out. And you're like, I don't know. I'm like, oh boy. Let's see if he remembers the user. And not too long ago, I actually wrote down all my passwords on one thing, and now I feel
it.
prepared for anything. Before I used to just off of my dome, I didn't really know anything, but now I feel prepared for anything.
Yeah, I've only got a couple different passwords I use, so if somebody finds out like one of them, I'm pretty much screwed on it.
That's how it is too. I know. I said the same thing, and my girl was like, you need to change that, right? Because if they get a hold of one of them, you're screwed. The same thing you just said. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
that's actually a really good point. I never thought of that. So I actually just switched some things the other day. But
good, yeah.
cool. So all right, you're training. You have a huge UFC Contender series coming up. Also, I think on that same card, which is what June 18th, we have Hannah Goldie and Brock Weaver.
Yep.
Hannah, obviously from Fusion, Island Fights alum. You're a Combat Night alum. What's that been like? Because you're training out of Fusion, right?
I'm training all over Orlando, man. I go to Fusion some. I go to Impact Boxing. I bounce around a bunch of different BJJ gyms. Tough as Nails, I go to a lot. Wrestle just about everywhere. Just any when you're a big guy, you kind of have to bounce around a lot of different spots because
Right.
you don't just see big guys that can fight walking around anywhere.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. Is it hard to find training partners?
It can be. I've had a few really good ones kind of fall in my lap, so it's been
Right.
awesome. But yeah, man, once you start getting over 200 something pounds, it can be difficult finding the guys you need. I mean, big guys just don't walk around the wall. 6'3",
Yeah.
205, athletic. It doesn't happen. So
I know. Hey, trust me, I'm eating as much as I possibly can. I weight lift every day, and I'm like 188 on a good day. I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know what I have to do.
And I played college football, so I've always thought of myself as being like kind of a smaller guy, not a big guy. And then now I'm done. I'm not in like a football locker room every day. So
Right.
everybody's, man, you're huge. I'm like, really? I don't know. I don't think so.
So you played at NIU, and then didn't you play at Iowa Western, right?
I played it. Yeah, I was there for a semester. Before that, I was at Iowa State out of high school, and then I ended up transferring and going to Northern Illinois.
Tight end, right?
Well, no. I played linebacker, and then just about everywhere I went, somehow I ended up, moving positions like 10 different times. But I ended up at tight end,
Right.
but not by choice at all whatsoever.
So now I've had the pleasure to call your fight at Combat Night. Shout out to Mitchell. I had to wear the shirt just for that.
Yeah.
And when I called your fight, it was like one of the strangest fights I've ever seen in a good way. I when I watched it and I was with Ramsey, you reminded me, and like you don't see this a lot at all. When you get a hold of a guy, it's a different feeling. The guy tapped immediately. Like it reminds me of like a Habib, like that type of grip where like, oh God, like you see it on the guy's face. This is different. So
Yeah.
your wrestling background and your football, do you think that's what creates that unique ability that you have to get a hold of someone and it's just different?
I think so. Yeah. I've been wrestling since I was about 5 years old, and I started wrestling in Iowa. I grew up kind of there, and then moved back to Florida.
Right.
But I think one thing that I do differently, I train. I have a strength trainer named Nate Keller, who I've known for a really long time, and we kind of train more, closer to like what a professional like NFL player would do, to be
Right.
honest. And I think that's a big. And what I do, like weak things break. If you're not lifting, I think that's very important. I don't think you need to lift every day as
Right.
a fighter, but you do need to lift, and you need to do it correctly. And I think a lot of guys don't take that as seriously as they should. So I think that helps a lot. And yeah, there's guys that they might be the best wrestler in their gym, an MMA gym here in Florida or something. So they think, oh, well, this guy can't take me down. But there's a huge difference between someone, that's wrestled at a really high level, like an international level, and, a guy that's at a regular BJJ gym and is the best wrestler there.
Yeah. And yeah, it's different, man. And then you like when you finish the fight in the first round and just quickly, I'm like, this guy is just different. And like, I know your wrestling is elite, but I'm telling you, it just was like breathtaking. The way your wrestling stands out. And then when you got in the booth, I was able to talk to you, and like you have this. There's like those get it guys in sports. Like there's guys that compete that are tough, that have a chin, and they have that grit, and they're going to move forward. They're going to engage. But there's people who get it. Like they're smart. They know what they're good at, what their strengths are. And you're one of those guys. You get it. Just listening to you commentate. You're an awesome commentator, by the way. That's
Thank
definitely your future.
you. I hope
Um,
so, man. It seems like an awesome job.
yeah, it's awesome. But I'm disappointed. I didn't see the stash today. A little bit. I was expecting the stash.
Yeah, and I don't know. I gotta clean it up a little bit. Yeah, that was. I didn't get the Just for Men, so I just figured I'd shave it off.
The UFC didn't tell you to cut it, right?
No, they didn't. They haven't told me
Okay.
anything. But I will actually get a haircut and things like that before my fight. So I need to look at. That's what when I was staying with Vulcan down in South Florida, I had a fight with Combat Night down there, and it was my second amateur fight, I think, when I was staying down there with him, and he looked at me. It was the day of my fight, and he's like, "You're not gonna get a haircut?" I was like, oh, "Why do I need a haircut?" He's like, "You're really gonna this is your brand, and that's what you're gonna put out there. Kind of like, what are you doing?" And I was like, I don't know, man. Just me. I don't know. He's like, you're not gonna shave. You're not gonna get a haircut. You're not gonna look professional. I was like, maybe next time, dude. You're catching me a little late. I got to fight in 4 hours. Not today, man.
Well, you should get the fresh fade, maybe. I don't know if that's your thing, but the fresh fade that would be a good look.
Yeah, I might get a fade. I might do something like that. I don't know. We'll see. I'll go somewhere and say whatever you think's best. I don't get a lot of haircuts.
Oh man, you're more courageous than I am. I don't trust people like that. I have a specific barber now, but I could never do that. I never could. You pulled off the stash though, so anything is possible.
I don't know if I pulled it off. I had one, but it wasn't great.
You pulled it off, but especially when you win like that, you could pretty much wear anything.
Yeah, winning's the coolest thing. So
yeah, 100%. And you just mentioned like you're training with Vulcan, you're training with guys like you helped them train for Daniel Cormier, who's arguably one of the greatest of all time. So you know what it's like to be in that professional mindset, to see how these guys prepare for the biggest fights in the world. How has that benefited you? And are some of those things are you taking into this UFC Contender Series fight? Because I see your Instagram, by the way. Follow this guy, Alton Meeks, and it looks like Rocky. It reminds me of Rocky, your whole training session here. So take me through that. How much has that helped you seeing these guys compare for the best?
Yeah, it taught me a lot, and at this point I'm like, okay, I think, I'm getting there. I'm close and I'm not working right now. So I'm able to train 3-4 times a day, which is great, because before it's tough. When I was in South Florida and around these guys, and even being, here in Orlando, there's plenty of guys that are very, very high level and, at the top echelon of the sport. And, especially when I was with Vulcan, when you live with somebody, you notice everything. So it's like the details he puts into everything about his day. When he was getting ready for that fight, it was like, what, you didn't bring your protein shake today? What did you put in your protein shake? You didn't put oatmeal in it. You didn't do this. And nutrition was a big part of it.
Yeah.
And, and when I was doing construction, like I can't, I can't bring a grill out there with me and and meal prep. I don't have a microwave out there. I can't do that. So it was tough. And now that I'm able to just this is what I've treated as like a profession. Like this is my job, so I'm going to show up and do it every day. Like this is my job because it is right now. So, I mean, that was a big thing for me and talking with a lot of coaches and stuff. There's guys that'll skip out on wrestling day or they'll skip out on sparring because that's not what they like to do. But I know Ben Askren had something out there talking about it, and he's like, man, if you just treat this like a job, you're going to be better than 70% of the guys out there, and you show up every day, because guys will skip out on stuff they don't like to do. But, I mean, if you're in a business, if you don't like to do taxes, you can't just skip out on it. You have to treat it like it's your job, because this is how you're getting paid and this is your livelihood.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I was so excited when I saw this because I remember talking to you, and I remember you said you just have so much going on. And like you just finished a guy in the first round. And you're like, yeah, and I really didn't even get to work on this that much because I have this going on. I'm like, wait. So you just did this and you really didn't get to work that much on this area? And you're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, you're going to be a problem for the whole heavyweight division. That's all you do is train. So I'm so excited for you to just fully put all of that in there.
I feel much better right now. Now I've actually been able to train and do these things. And really treat it like okay, this is what I'm meant to do, because before that fight, I was getting up before 5 and I'd make my lunch, make a sandwich, whatever, go to work, get off work at 3:30, after working, a long day, and then, okay, I got to drive to wherever I'm training, and I probably get one training session in, and I'm beat because I've been out in the sun all day working. And yeah, it was very difficult to get that done and treat it like, okay, this is my profession, because I wasn't able to just do that full time. And now that I am, it's been, this is what I want to do. I love waking up and training every day. I love it. I like doing that. I love wrestling. I like jiu-jitsu. I like boxing. So like every day I get to wake up and train, even if I don't do that well that day. It's a good day. Any day I get to train is a good day.
Right. And okay, so you're a physical specimen for one, and you're a humble guy, so you may not say it, but you are. You're a physical specimen, and you have an elite wrestling background as well as football. You mix those two together, you have something pretty terrifying. What you just mentioned Ben Askren. It's interesting that you said that, because I was going to actually bring that up. How, like, that's such a big advantage to have that wrestling mindset, that blue collar mindset. Like you just said, wake up before 5 and go to work, or just that wrestling mindset of never quitting, even if it's something you don't want to do, you immediately have an advantage with that type of mindset.
Yeah, I think, and it's something that Ben's done a lot, has talked about, like, mindset training and things like that. And people say, like, oh, fighting is 90% mental. I mean, I don't know if I agree with that. If you don't have the physical attributes, you're not going to get it done. I can't just will myself to win if I haven't trained. But there is a huge mental aspect of it. You might not be able to use 100% of your physical attributes if you don't have that mental aspect of it. So that's a huge part, and mentally, I think wrestling, yeah, it's just such a grind, and you do it for so long, it just becomes normal for you just to compete and just to work like that all day, every day.
Yeah, and so you're fighting this guy. Again, I appreciate your time, Alton. I know you're busy. You have the fight of your life ahead of you, so thank you.
Oh, man.
You're fighting this guy. I believe I'm saying his name correctly, Jorgen De Castro. He's 4-0.
Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, and I apologize to him if I'm butchering his name here. Are you the type of guy that likes to study film? Do you know what you're getting into, or you're just worried about, like you said, yourself and your game plan?
I'm really worried more about myself. Not so much, I know when I was down with Vulcan, he studied a lot of film. So I've watched a lot of film on Cormier, but there's a lot of film on Cormier out there. At this point in our careers, there's not a ton of film on either of us really out there. So
Right.
I'm going off one, maybe two fight, one fight, and then like a shaky cell phone camera fight. It's tough to really game plan off that, so I'm just going to go out there and do what I do. I have a pretty good idea of what he does,
Right.
and he has a pretty good idea of what I do, I'm sure. So, I can't worry too much about what he's doing. I have to go out and do what I do. And I'm not one that's going to get super into game planning, because if I go out there and I go, okay, all I'm going to do, I'm going to throw a jab and I'm going to throw a cross and then I'm going to do this. And if it doesn't go that way, then it all kind of unravels. So
Right.
I just got to kind of feel it out and just put pressure on him, attack. I'm not worried about winning and losing. I never am. Too many guys, they go out there, and I've learned this through wrestling, they go out there and wrestle not to lose, or they go out and fight not to lose. And it just doesn't work that well. If you go out there and you put pressure on your opponent and you attack the whole time, good things are going to happen. And that's kind of how I look at it.
I love that. You're a go get it guy. Absolutely love it. And then when you were in the booth, and it's not that you were disappointed, but like I could tell that you have a high standard for yourself, and that's something that the elite have. I remember John Jones. I spoke to John Jones's agent, Abe Kawa from First Round Management, and even after he beat Smith, he was like kind of like, "Ah, man, I should have finished him." And Abe's like, "Dude, you didn't get touched, and you just dominated for 5 rounds. Take it easy on yourself." And that's just something a great share. So going into this fight, do you have an expectation that you absolutely want, or is it just win and get the contract?
I know if you win, you don't get the contract automatically. You have to impress Dana and things like that. But at the end of the day, I'm going out there to do what I do. There's nothing in my mind. Every time I step into the cage or step on a wrestling mat, I kind of adopted a new mentality after the World Team Trials, like 2 years ago, I guess. I was sitting in the car and I'd lost a match, and I was with one of my coaches, one of the Army coaches, and he talked to me, and said, "Hey, I feel like you go out there in every match, you expect like, okay, I'm gonna beat this guy, I'm gonna tech him, and it's gonna be done in a minute. And when that doesn't happen, things go south for you, and then you start getting crazy, and it doesn't happen the way you want it to. He's like, man, you got to go into every match, and you got to think it's going to be a dogfight. It's going to go the entire time. It's going to be knockdown, drag out. And when you do finish the match early, then that's great, but you have to go into every match with the mindset that you're prepared to go the entire time, and you're prepared to do whatever it takes. And that's kind of how I've gone into fighting. I don't go on there and think I'm going to finish this guy in a minute. Like, I never do. And that's what's happened in all my fights. But I think, okay, this is going to go 3 rounds, and I'm going to go down the deep end. I know I have better cardio. I know I have better wrestling, and I'm going to make it so miserable that he just doesn't want to be in there anymore. And that's just kind of how I approach it. I'm going to attack the whole time, and it's going to go the whole time, and I'm fine with that.
When a heavyweight has cardio and wrestling, that's a nightmare for a lot of heavyweights, because stamina is an issue for big guys, and then especially wrestling. Look at Cain Velasquez and Daniel Cormier, all these guys. For you, do you think that the cage is going to make a difference? The fact that I remember seeing the Combatagon, and I've seen the Island Fights ring, and then I saw Michael Davis in the UFC octagon. I'm like, oh, wow, this octagon is a lot bigger. Do you see that as an advantage, a disadvantage, or it's just another thing?
Yeah, their cage is massive.
Yeah.
And I personally see it as an advantage because the way I wrestle, my style, I think it molds well to MMA. And
right.
I think I'm more of an explosive. I don't want to like brag or anything, but I'm a Division I football player. I'm a good athlete. So I think that plays to my advantage. And growing up, I was never a heavyweight. I was always taller and skinnier. And I was always wrestling older kids, and so that's kind of how I learned to wrestle was, wrestling like a little guy.
Right.
So I think it helps me more. I'm good off the cage. I'm good at takedowns off the cage and off the wall, and I work on that. But in open space, I'm just as good, if not better. I mean, once I get a hold of a leg or something like that, then I know I can out scramble pretty much anybody that I'm going to get in the cage with. So I'm very comfortable being in an open space. That works well for me.
Yeah, and an interesting thing is Alton Meeks here is you, like I said, you're a get it guy. You know what the UFC looks for. They're about selling tickets. They're a business. Before anything, they're a business. It's entertainment. Yeah. You just talked about it. Even if you win, it doesn't guarantee a contract. They want someone that's compelling, that magnetism. People want to watch them compete. Someone that's entertaining. Yeah. You told me a very, very amazing story about an injury that you had, and talk about marketing and talk about a brilliant story. Can you kind of expand on what that was?
Yeah, I think I have an extremely marketable story, and it's not something like that I'm like super proud of because I didn't do anything to earn that, and it's not
right.
But I was going to wrestle for the Army, and that was like my life goal. That was what I wanted to do. And 3 days before I was supposed to leave for basic training, before I went out and just trained full time in Colorado Springs, I got into a car accident. I was with my dad, and someone drove into oncoming traffic and hit us head on at a high rate of speed. I ended up fracturing a vertebrae in my neck, my C5 vertebrae. So I was in a neck brace for a while, and going through the discharge process right now, obviously, and I went to 2 different neurosurgeons. I'm cleared to do everything, but the military is not going to take a risk on that. So that's just how it goes. Didn't really know what I was going to do. So I decided, I'm just going to get in the cage and start fighting again. I mean, I only got one life, and if they're going to tell me no, then I'm going to find another way to do what I want to do. I love to fight. I love to wrestle. It's just, I really enjoy it. And that's why I do it. I'm not doing it because I want to be famous or whatever. I do it because I think this is a good lifestyle, and it's what I like to do. So, I think it's a good story, and, I've come back from that and, had a fight, and, it was sad and it was a tough time, but, it happened, and people keep telling me everything happens for a reason. So, I'm hoping this is the reason, and, we'll find out.
Yeah, that's incredibly powerful. And like you said, it's not, you're not bragging, but it's a story of you overcoming something tragic. And that's what you did. And kind of describes you as a person. And like you said, everything happens for a reason. Here you are, UFC Contender Series. And I think everything is going to happen for a reason. And that's why you will get in the UFC. I'm not just saying that from a friend, from a fellow commentator. I'm saying that as like truly just watching you compete. You have all the ingredients to not only win, but get into the UFC and be a huge star. And that's my next question. I know you're a humble guy. I know you don't have that Conor McGregor where you're calling everyone out. You're very respectful. But is there an immediate fight that you would want? And let's just say it goes perfectly, which I think it will. Is there one fight you're like, oh man, I know that's a guy I want to fight?
Man, there's a lot of guys in the heavyweight division that I'd like to fight in the UFC that I
Yeah.
think I match up well with. I've been trying to get a fight with Greg Hardy for a long time.
He
Since we
has
were
a fight coming up too.
He does have a fight coming up, so I know that's not gonna happen. So that's fine. But I've been trying to get that fight since I was an amateur, and it's never happened. Which it is what it is. But there's a lot of guys that I would like to fight in the UFC in the heavyweight division, and I just outside the top five, man, I look at the heavyweight division and it's not real impressive to me, and it's kind of sad. There's guys in there that I don't, especially some of the new guys they've signed that I don't really think deserve to be there, and there's other guys that are much more deserving of being there. But
right,
I guess whatever sells tickets, and hopefully I can get this job done and go in there and clean out the heavyweight division for some of these other guys. I mean, I know I've seen a lot of talent out there, and hopefully it continues to grow and get better. But as far as the heavyweight division, man, I've seen a lot of chubby guys that really don't have much athletic talent or skill, and it's kind of shocking to me.
Yeah, it's a brawler. They know it's a brawler. The guy's either going to get knocked out or knock someone out.
Yeah,
but good thing you say that. The heavyweight division seems to be in like a weird adjustment period where it's like DC. This probably his last fight with Stipe, which is a great fight.
Great fight,
yeah. It's who you got, by the way?
Man, it's hard to go against DC, watching a lot of that film. Obviously, he won the first fight, but watching all that film down there, his striking's so underrated. It's unbelievable.
It is.
Like and especially out of the clinch, I think he's the most underrated striker in MMA. Like, it's very, very good. And I watched hours of it, and it's really, yeah, I watched a lot of it, but he's very, very talented. It's hard for me to, talk negatively about DC in any way, because one thing I want to do is, he seems like a great guy. I've never met the guy. I don't want to act like I'm a big fanboy or whatever, but wrestling is really important to me, and growing the sport, and DC is a guy that plugs wrestling any way he can. He's an ambassador of the sport, and it's tough, man, to root against a guy that is, he's really doing his best to grow the sport of wrestling, and he does it because he cares, and he's coaching a high school team, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm about to say he's like the perfect representative for the UFC. Like LeBron, I think, represents the NBA, and then the NFL, you'd say like Tom Brady. I think Daniel Cormier is an amazing ambassador for the UFC, just professional in and out of the octagon. Like you said, a high school coach. He's the UFC heavyweight champion. He's a champ, and he still makes a high school coach.
Yeah, that's awesome. Him and Ben Askren both do stuff like Askren has the Askren Wrestling Academy and stuff like that. I don't know how they have all this time to do all this, but I mean, that's awesome, and that's kind of like they're giving back, and it's it's good for the sport of wrestling as well, which I really like.
Yeah, and Alton, not only do I think you get a contract, I think you make an immediate impact into the UFC. Like you said, the heavyweight division's in a really weird point where I think DC is going to be out, win or lose with Stipe. Maybe a rubber match if he loses just because of the draw and it's 1-1. But other than that, I think you make an immediate impact right away, and I think you're going to be an issue. I think your wrestling is something. I told Felicia Spencer the last podcast, and I told her, because she's fighting Cyborg next, I said the UFC, if you look at the top people, of course they're mixed martial artists, but a lot of them are specialists. They have one thing that they're better than everybody at. It's Khabib is his wrestling, Max Holloway it's his boxing and his timing, and it's like you have that. You have that one thing that I know you're going to have an advantage going into it. So I think you're going to have an immediate impact. I think you and Greg Hardy would be a very fun fight. Yeah, I think it'd be a very fun fight.
Yeah, but hopefully down the line we can get that to happen. But I don't see it anytime soon. So it is what it is, man. I'm not dead set on I have to fight him or I have to fight anybody.
Right.
I'm not dead set. I'm not one of those guys like they interviewed us like, oh, what's your goal? Everybody says I want to be the UFC champ. And obviously everybody wants to be the champ, but man, to me, stuff like what Cowboy Cerrone's doing, like fighting. Dude, he fought 20 days ago, and he's fighting again now. Like,
it's crazy.
I want to fight as often as possible because this is what I like to do. I enjoy the training, and I like going to the fights, and I like fighting. And I think that car wreck was part of it, man. You know, you get a different outlook on life, and you know, I could not be able to train at all. You know,
Right.
I could never be able to do any of this stuff ever again. I could never be able to walk again. But here I am, and I'm very lucky and very fortunate. And every day I wake up, I might be tired and I might be sore or whatever, but I could have had all this taken away. So I'm super grateful and super happy any day I get to train and do whatever I want to do, and it's awesome.
You're a true inspiration, my friend. You really are, and I mean that. Please plug away sponsors, where to follow you, because I don't know if you're a big social media guy. I see you post more with your training, which is unbelievable. But with the UFC, they're going to want you to market maybe probably more. So please plug away.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Alton Meeks, Twitter at Murda_Meeks, I believe. You know, sponsors, Saman Foundation, you know, Lance Maxwell, they've been with me, you know, since before the car wreck. I wasn't very active for a while after the car wreck, obviously, but man, they've helped me and supported me a lot. And, you know, ever since I was an amateur, man, they've been with me the whole time. And Thrasher Hemp Chews has sponsored me as of recently. And, you know, I just want to say thank you to all of them, and thank you to all my coaches, training partners, and you know, another big one is my parents. I want to say thank you to them. You know, everybody wants the Nike deals and all the big sponsorships, but the best sponsor you can get is your parents, man. You know, you go to any local kids tournament, you know, the people that are there, and I think back on that, the people that have always been there are both my parents. They've been at every event I've ever had. They've been at every wrestling tournament, every football game, you know, so that's what's most important to me, and all the people that have been there for me since I started.
That's incredible. That's incredible. You're always welcome on my podcast. Anytime you want, call me up. You're always on there. Before I let you go, I have one last prediction I need from you, because I find it really interesting when I get a fighter's perspective on a fight. Ngannou versus Junior Dos Santos. I watched Junior Dos Santos train at American Top Team when I saw him and Greg, and I'm like, man, does he hit hard, and like his footwork so underrated. How do you see that fight going? Because it's almost like who hits the chin first.
Yeah, I really don't know how to call that fight. It's going to be a really good fight. Junior is super technical, and I like watching him box, man. He's really technical. And, you know, watching some of his fights have been pretty epic. But, you know, Ngannou hits so hard, and he's just it's like almost like a different kind of strength. I don't know. Like,
yeah, weird.
He hits so hard. So if he catches you with one shot, but then again, Junior hits pretty hard too. So I don't know. If I had to place a bet on it, I don't know who I'd pick. I wouldn't want to lose any money because I feel like it's such a toss-up. One of them, you know, and that's the thing about the heavyweight division. It only takes one punch, and that's why those guys get taken care of, because, man, and one of those punches can change your life too. You know, like it, you know. So whoever keeps their hands up, I'd have to give it to Junior probably, just because he's been around so long and he's so technical. He's very, very good. But I mean, at the end of the day, Ngannou can hit him with one punch and it could be over.
Yeah, I think Ngannou just has some momentum going. And like you said, that one punch, what he did to Overeem.
Oh my God.
Oh.
that was brutal. See, that's what that's what can happen though. Just one punch, that's all it takes.
Yeah, it's incredible. Alton, again, thank you very much for your time. Like I said, you're always welcome. Good luck on your fight. Everyone, please give him a follow. I appreciate you, my man.
Appreciate you. Thank you very much for having me on, man. It's always a pleasure.
Of course. Anytime.